Welcome back to my channel, everybody. This video is going to be all about my food plots. I'm going to answer hopefully everybody's questions. I get hundreds of questions every year on my YouTube channel here about what I plant, why I plant it, when I plant it, how I plant it, and the places I plant it and why I plant them in those areas. So hopefully on this video I'm going to answer all those questions for you. But first thing, I want to give a big thanks to Biologic. This video is brought to you by Biologic. They are an awesome company to work with. They worked with me this year with my food plots and sent me lots of maximum blend and things like that. And I highly recommend Biologic for your food plot needs. And the link's going to be in the description below, right to Biologic's homepage, and you ask them any questions you want on there as to what you should plant and when you should plant it, and they'll be glad to answer any questions you guys have and send you out the seed that you need. And this video is also brought to you by the Jet Beam WL20 hunting flashlight. This thing is the real deal. It is totally waterproof and works into negative degree temperatures. And its beam length is 254 meters. So this thing is like a spotting scope. This is what every hunter needs when you arrow that big buck. You're going to want one of these things when you go looking for it at night. But the link is going to be in the description below on this as well. I'll even give you guys a little preview of how bright it is here. Okay, so here's the light up close out of the box, and that turns it on, and it's got a really cool feature for hunters especially. It's got a red light and a green light, and these lights are super bright. Red lights are nice because animals like deer and stuff, they can't see red light, and predators and stuff as well. So hope you guys enjoy this video, and hopefully I answer any of your questions you have about my food plots and stuff. So let's get right to the video. Lots of drone footage coming up here, folks. As you can see right here, we're spraying the food plots with herbicide just to get all the weeds killed and stuff. But I would highly recommend, if you're establishing a new plot somewhere, you're going to want to get a soil test. You can take a sample of soil, usually out of 3 or 4 different parts of your plot that you're going to be planting, and send it in. You can send it to Biologic and they'll give you a soil sample, or there's tons of places that you can send your sample to that will tell you, what the pH is and how much or how little of fertilizer you're going to want to add to the plot, or lime. So that's what I recommend first, is getting that soil sample. Once you get the soil sample, you'll probably want to, spray your food plot just to get the weeds down and stuff. You could also come in and brush hog it. I usually brush hog mine after all the weeds and stuff are already dead, just to, knock them down even more, depending on whether or not you're going to rototill your plot or plow your plot and disc it and stuff. If you're going to rototill it, you got to have all that weed matter and stuff really knocked down. Otherwise, your rototiller is going to get full of stuff. You're full of, the weeds. It's not that big of a deal if you're just going to plow it and disc it, though. I normally start spraying my plots 3 to 4 weeks in advance prior to actually planting. So I usually get my brassica plots in the first week of August, and that's kind of the recommended time up here in the Northeast. That way you give your brassicas the most time to grow before that first frost. So you want them fully mature when that first frost hits them. So now, as you can see, it's been about 3 weeks since I sprayed that plot, and all the foliage is dead. And now what I'm doing is spreading lime and fertilizer according to my soil test. So I don't have a big spreader for the lime or fertilizer, so I just use a hand spreader so I can get an even coat everywhere. But I certainly don't recommend using a hand spreader for the lime and fertilizer. That's, way harder than it needs to be. But I also don't really recommend spreading it prior to plowing and disking, if that's how you're going to be doing your food plot. I feel like if you plow all that under that deep, you might be getting that too deep. I mean, I really don't know that for a fact, But since I'm just going to be rototilling this, I feel like putting the lime and fertilizer on before I do that is not going to, bury that fertilizer too deep. Whereas if I was plowing it, I feel like it might get it too deep. Although, I'm really not sure. I can't say that with any, facts behind it. But that's how I'm going to do this food plot is with a rototiller. So I'm just going to spread the lime and fertilizer right on top, as you can see here. And then we'll get to the next step. So the food plot is now rototilled, and now is the fun part. We get to start seeding them down. So I'm using Biologic Maximum Blend, which if you guys are interested in that, you can look in the description below. I'm just doing it with a hand seeder, which I'll explain why here in a little bit on the video. But we're just going to go ahead and walk up and down the plot, spreading the seed at the rate that it needs to be spread at here. I hope everybody's enjoying this food plot video I'm doing for everybody. I get tons of questions, every year on my food plots and how I plant them and where I plant them and why I plant them in those spots and how I plant them. And this video I'm just pretty much doing all on food plots to show you the process and what I do with them. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why I use a hand seed spreader. Well, those brassicas are so tiny that I've had a few bad experiences using the big pull behind spreaders, because if the hole opens up just a little bit, you're spreading way too much seed, and those brassicas take so much nutrients from the soil. You really have to get them good and spread out. You really don't want to put them on too thick, otherwise they'll starve each other. And I like doing it by hand just because I have total control of how much seed's getting put out, and I can feel it on my, when I'm spreading it, I can feel it on my arms and hands and stuff as it goes out, so I know kind of how much is coming out, and I don't wonder if I'm pulling something behind me, how much is actually coming out. So that's why I use the hand spreader. It's a little more work, get a little more sweaty, but it is what it is. Right here is where I killed ghosts last year, and then the G2 buck came out right behind him. And I'm getting some pictures of the G2 buck this year. Is a 4.5-year-old, possibly a 5.5-year-old, and unfortunately he didn't really put on any inches. So I think he's hit his max potential, and hopefully one of us knock him down this fall. But let's get on to the other plots. This plot right here that I'm seeding down is obviously a different plot than what I had been working on throughout the duration of this video so far. I've got 6 plots in total, and overall it's about 5.5 acres of brassica food plots I have planted. This plot that you see me planting right here has actually got a mix of rye and oats, just because this plot tends to be a little wetter soil, and I think the rye grows, still can grow pretty well in wet soil. The top part of it's all brassica yet, because that doesn't get very wet, and I want to make sure I have brassica there, just because it's such an attractant during the late season, and I want all those deer, in that woods come December when it starts getting cold and snowy and stuff. With all that food there, that's where they're going to be. Okay, so now we have all the seed spread on the fruit plots, and now we're just going to want to roll that in. So I have this little cultipacker here that Burn Man was generous enough to let me use for the weekend, and this is a perfect one to use, because if you use one that's a lot bigger than that, and it has like 3 sections of it, like usually a lot of the big farms have, sometimes if the soil is pretty dry, it'll pack it in too far, and you really don't want that seed in very deep. At least the brassica, in some cases it really doesn't even need to be covered, but you want it packed in just a little bit, but not too much. There's kind of a happy medium right there, and these smaller cultipackers seem to do the best job with that. You could even, if you wanted to, you could take like a pallet and throw a couple good big rocks on it and just tie a chain to your a gator or a 4-wheeler or whatever you're using and drag that around. That would be enough to put your seed in the ground like you want it. So really after this step you're done, and you just hope that the weather works out and it gets some rain pretty soon after the seed goes down, and then you're just going to be hunting it after that. So I'll get into some of the reasons why I put the plots where I put them. Okay, so in this overview of the property here, you can see 5 different food plots planted. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The first two I'm going to be talking about are these ones right here at the bottom. If you look in between those 2 food plots, it's super thick red brush, and at the bottom of it you have a big beaver swamp. This is an ideal spot for food plots right here, because in rifle season, when these deer get pressured super hard, they all funnel right into that really thick stuff right there. And with having these food plots right on the edges of it, they're comfortable going in and out of that, thick bedding and popping out into these food plots right before dark, during daylight hours. This food plot I'm zooming in on here with the drone is the only one that I can really hunt. The other ones, over toward the road to the right there, that's more just to have more food next to that thick bedding to keep them deer in there during rifle season. I can't really hunt that plot, but with that plot being that far out, they're going to have to walk, in some cases right through that plot to get to that other one. So I might be able to catch them, right before dark, come to that other one. This plot right here that we're coming up to with the drone is right in between the cornfield and the clover field. This one's a nice food plot because a lot of the deer that are coming out into this field will come out a little earlier than normal just because they know they have to go all the way across that field to get to that food plot right there. This food plot over here in the corner is an awesome archery spot. I have killed a recurve doe out of this corner right here, and this doesn't really have any bedding next to it. It's all kind of open hardwoods in there, but it's a spot that I can I'll be able to see from where I have my hunting shanty set up. I can see down in the red brush, and I can see that plot as well. So this other plot we're going to now is in the opposite corner of these fields over here, and I can't see this one from the hunting spot that I would be hunting those other plots. But obviously I'll camera set up on all these and maybe be able to pattern a certain buck hitting one of these plots. But there's another super thick bedding area. If you, once the drone goes up a little bit, you'll be able to see in the woods right behind that plot. That's all super thick kind of red brushy stuff, and a lot of deer bed in that right there next to that food plot. So the goal with my food plots are just to keep them really close to bedding, and when pressure starts during the rifle season, those big mature deer, they get in those thick spots, and as long as you don't go in there and boot them out of there, they usually don't want to leave them areas. Okay, so what you're looking at right here is the view I'm actually going to have from my hunting shanty that I'm going to set up this fall. You can see that food plot right there in the corner, and then if you look down the hill, you can actually, it's hard to see from the drone, but right past that big tree that I'm flying the drone toward right now, you can actually look right through the whole length of that food plot right there in that thick bedding area. And then big bucks like Ghost did last year, they bed in there, same with the G2 buck, and they sneak out of that bedding to get a bite to eat, usually at dark, but as they get more comfortable in there, and as long as nobody boots them out of there, they'll come out a little earlier and a little earlier every single night. And this food plot over here is obviously just there to kind of hold them in that red brush. That's not really a plot that we'll be able to hunt necessarily, but not all food plots are planted to hunt over. This plot is more just to try to hold them deer in that food plot, and the kill plot's the one that's actually farther in there, deeper in there. Actually, you can see all the deer tracks that are already in this food plot, and this plot's only been in the ground for 2 days, and if we get right down next to the dirt with a drone, get right down in close, look at all the little brassicas already popping up. It's only been in the ground for 2 days, so that's a really good sign right there. Overall, I hope everybody really enjoyed this video. Hopefully I answered a lot of questions, and if you guys have any more questions, just leave a comment below, and I'll make sure to try to answer them on an upcoming video here. I'm really looking forward to this coming deer season, and I'll be having a video with all my hit list bucks coming out here very shortly. So thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.